Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, we are going back to one of my favorite trilogies in all of gaming, especially during that goated PS2 era. We're talking about Jak and Daxter. In particular, I will emphasize the trilogy. So none of this, unfortunately, although it'll be lightly referenced, none of this game right here, Combat Racing. Never played this, do have it in the collection. And certainly we're not talking about The Last Frontier, which is by the same team that brought us Secret Agent Clank, which speaks for itself. What we're talking about is Jak 1, 2, and 3. Why are we doing that? And isn't it crazy that for all of the PS2 games we've covered on this channel, we haven't talked about any of the core 3D platforming series except for Sly Cooper. So that means no Ratchet and Clank yet, no Jak and Daxter. It's something we have to make up on. And I want to start right here, right now. We're talking about Jak and Daxter because the newest Naughty Dog IP just got revealed. It's called Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet. There's been a lot of conversation about it, to say the least, as there always is with a Naughty Dog game. So I wanted to go back to the essence, to my point of discovering Naughty Dog, and just talk about the evolution of Jak and Daxter, how important of a gaming franchise it is, and just celebrate this awesome series. And again, make up for lost time on a trilogy of games I've wanted to talk about here on Retro Rebound for a while. But before we talk about Jak and Daxter, we got to talk about Rakuten. It is the holiday season. That means it's time to buy some gifts, but what if I told you you could make some money while buying gifts for friends and family? That's why I'm here to tell you about Rakuten. Rakuten is the largest cashback site which partners with over 3,500 of the biggest name brands that you've seen on this planet. Nike, Kohl's, Macy's, Best Buy, Walmart, Adidas, Factor, and so many more bring you cashback, coupons, and promo codes all for free. All you've got to do is the thing that you already are doing, except you're doing it through Rakuten. So you'll go to their website, you'll click on some links, you'll shop, and you'll get some cash back. All of them vary to different percentages. Those rotate as well as daily deals and coupons. So if you're shopping a lot, especially again around this time of year, it's a good way to save some money and then you buy someone else's gift with that money you got back from Rakuten. Like, it's a really good cycle. It's a one-step process. All you got to do is one thing. Go to the link in the description down below. Sign up for Rakuten. You get $40 as a sign-up bonus when you make a qualifying purchase. And all you got to do after that is shop as you usually would. If you shop at a store, there's a pretty good chance that they support Rakuten. So again, you'll find things like I shop at Best Buy a lot. I went ahead and saw that they had a Redbubble deal. That was crazy to me. I love buying clothes on Redbubble. So there's a lot of great sites here that are a part of Rakuten. So if you're already shopping there, you may as well get some cash back. Check it out, link down below. And shout out to Rakuten for sponsoring today's video. Let's start off at the top, of course, with Jak and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy. This one is a really interesting story because you have to remember that before this was Crash Bandicoot. And Crash Bandicoot was really evolving the 3D platformer as it gave you more and more freedom. What Naughty Dog is known for is really pushing the gameplay boundaries, the storytelling boundaries forward, and you're going to see that illustrated, I think, perfectly if you really look at what Crash did and how it led into Jak and Daxter, the first game, and then into the second game. That moveset, that expansion, is really what I think defines Naughty Dog and their legacy. Is they just kept giving you more tools and building upon what already exists in fun and exciting ways without sacrificing what was there in the past. So when you look at Crash Bandicoot, it's a lot of 3D platforming. The camera's just following you. There's no real control over the camera. Otherwise, a lot of these scenes are set for you, and that's fine. That's old school, and Crash Bandicoot is still great. I played all of those games for the first time when the Insane Trilogy dropped, and I thought they were a ton of fun. But what Precursor Legacy manages to do is evolves the formula, and you see the classic moves that Jak has, like the crouch to the high jump, the roll to the long jump. You see him doing his spin, his glide. You see it's very collectible driven, just like you'd expect at the time from a Naughty Dog game, which is funny because they're like the opposite now. When you look at The Last of Us or Uncharted, like they're pure storytellers. And we would get into that bag eventually, really, with Jak and Daxter. But here with this one, it's a true evolution of what Crash brought to the table. And it's that moveset, it's camera control, it's a sense of openness, large, expansive environments. The game looks better than Crash Bandicoot ever did. Like, there's so many wins to this when you look at gaming history and how this moved forward. It's a simple collectathon. Otherwise, though, of course, this would be the place that it was born for a lot of us to fall in love with collecting the Precursor orbs. But for the most part, you're going to be hitting all these different forms of eco, whether it be for health or your movement speed, and they're going to change how you interact with the level. and you're going to be obsessing over 100% completing all these. And for me, as they gave me more cheat codes, in particular with Jak 3, that's where I really fell in love with hunting down the precursor orbs. But it really does start here with a simple 3D platformer. And that's what I really love about the trilogy, is it reminds me a lot of Sly Cooper. What I love in Sly Cooper the most is what Sly 2 offers, which really is a hybrid of everything. The mission variety, you have the 3D platforming that defined the first game. It's a do-everything game. And I think Jak and Daxter followed a very similar trajectory, right? You look at it, it's a traditional 3D platformer, and I think that the DNA between all three Jak games is similar than that of Sly, where I feel like a little bit of Sly was always throwing something different at the wall. So getting into Jak 2, to me, it's really hard to talk about Jak 1 without talking about the game on the CRT here behind me in Jak 2, is that Jak 1, you have all of these great moves. Jak 2 steps in and elevates everything. Storytelling, new forms, new guns. It's got everything. In fact, this is a really cool complete box copy, and so I'll go over this in full detail when we do a true remembering and we hit literally every Jak and Daxter game. But what's cool about this is when you open it up, you'll actually see here that there's a tip on the front of the manual, and you can't read it, but it does say that on the reverse of the cover art, there is a game map. And this is significant because feature number one that really defines Jak and Daxter in the case of its second entry is this here kind of open world. So Jak 3 was really where things completely opened up, but Jak 2 gave you full exploration of New Haven. And when you combine that with no sacrifice whatsoever on the gameplay front, like all the movement tech that I just talked about in a great 3D platformer in Precursor Legacy is still here, right? It's still here, it's untouched, it's beautiful. And then you add on into here, oh, you can get into a mech suit, you can ride around vehicles, you have this big open world, the collectibles you know and love are still here. Jak can fight more now, he's got a dark mode. This was, for a lot of people, and still is, the perfect sequel and the perfect Naughty Dog game. It really defines what their legacy is all about, which is just moving the medium forward. Again, the storytelling, I mean, it's a big emphasis on the back of the box. They talk about how this is going to be about betrayal, love, revenge. And if you think you're ready, think again. Like, it was putting all of that forward. But at the same time, Jak and Daxter always had this great comedic touch. Like, Jak took things very seriously, but then Daxter, we know Daxter. I mean, this man was sitting here in this PSP game and he was fighting like he was Neo. So we already know what this dude is capable of as a bug exterminator. We know he's got that comedic touch. And so that yin and yang, that balance, is what made, I think, Naughty Dog a household name for my generation. For many people a little bit older than me, it was really Crash Bandicoot. But for many of us, it was taking those ideas from Crash, evolving them into Jak, and then adding, I think, enriching gameplay without any sacrifice. You had the narrative, you had the guns, you had the vehicles, and I just remember driving around the vehicles in this game, running into other people, stealing from them, beating people up. Like, this was, I don't know, in a way, it was kind of like my first GTA when I really think about it, because I could just do what I wanted. And granted, it wasn't like the open worlds we get nowadays where they're much more interactive, but it did feel like I would define it more as like a Mafia 2 open world where it's like this holder to all of these missions. And so I just had an absolute blast going through Jak 2. I mean, I remember playing it for the first time when I was a kid, and that feeling of turning into Dark Jak for the first time, right? Because they up the stakes. They up the stakes on a more serious level when Jak has been experimented on in prison for multiple years now, and he comes out a changed, angrier person, right? Pushing Daxter to the side to open things up. He's like, I got this. I'm angry. I'm out for vengeance. That's a very different Jak from the one we knew to start things off, this kind of innocent teenager, if you will. But it also says a lot when the second game on the cover art, you see this dude's holding the gun. That was the big thing for me. I, outside of Sly Cooper, didn't really get down with platformers. I always wanted a little bit of this, you know, or a little bit of that. Like, I wanted something there gameplay wise that was intriguing than just hitting my jump button. And I think Precursor Legacy did something great. I think that, of course, the original Sly Cooper did something great, but I need that extra layer. I need a little bit of like ketchup on my burger, if you will. And so adding in gunplay, all these different weapons, shotguns, assault rifles, or the like, of course, I'm not using the exact terminology, just evolve that gameplay more. And again, this is what Jak 2 was all about, to me at least, was just being able to do everything and pulling me in by the mind-bending nature of the game. I think looking at it nowadays, you can still appreciate it, you can still love it, it can still be a GOAT for you, but I really do feel like Jak 2, for many of us, was this moment of like, whoa, video games are incredible. So that's a lot of what this game represents for me. And then the PSP did do some of the heavy lifting. Remember, I said we're going to lightly mention this one. Daxter, for me, was a big deal because now you get a little bit of on the go. So you get to run around New Haven. It still has a little bit of that open world fare. It's not, again, the full Naughty Dog experience you've come to expect and love. It is that kind of era of PSP games where they said, let's go focus on spin-off characters over here. So Secret Agent Clank, he gets a game. You have Daxter, he gets a game, and so on and so forth. Daxter, of course, being the best of the bunch, I feel, when it comes to mascot characters getting their own spin-offs. But you would have that love enhanced by being able to explore this world with all of the bells and whistles, melee combat, precursor orb collections, cheat unlocks, all within the palm of your hand. So that love was really enhanced as the years would go on. But Jak 2 really did serve, I think, as a major turning point for myself and others. So we move on from Jak 2 to Jak 3. Jak 3, I've learned through the era of YouTube, seems to be slightly more divisive than I actually thought it was. Now, I was introduced to the series differently in that I hit Jak 2, 3, then 1 as a kid, right? Then you do it right again as an adult. But that was the order I hit things in, but I loved Jak 3. But admittedly, I think this one's a little more divisive because it doesn't inch the medium forward as much in a tangible way as I think people wanted. For me, I'll break down why it was more than enough. But for a lot of people, I feel like that was the missing element to this game. And then there was never a Jak 4. We get combat racing. There was Lost Frontier. There was Daxter. It was kind of downhill from there. I always wish that Naughty Dog would go back and do a Jak 4. They talked about potentially doing it, I think, before they went to do The Last of Us. And as much as I love Jak and Daxter, I think that was a good call because while I'm not a big fan of Talau 2, I do love me Last of Us 1. Like, that is one of the best games ever made. So, adore that. Great choice, Naughty Dog. But Jak 3. Jak 3 to me is such an important video game because number one, I think this is where I learned I love a kind of post-apocalyptic Mad Max setting. Jak 3, you're in this city in the middle of the wasteland, and you go out into that wasteland in these Mad Max style vehicles. Like, it's very, to me, Mad Max Fallout coded, which I didn't know at the time until I got much older. This is the type of world I love to wander around in. This is the open world experience I love. And that was the thing that I think was different for Jak 3 compared to Jak 2, is Jak 2 had you in like a city space and very large hubs. Jak 3 felt truly incredibly open. I mean, you'd hit the dirt out there, get in your vehicle and drive around this massive map. And as a kid, I mean, my brain was on fire between that and Mega Man X Command Mission and Knights of the Old Republic. Like, I was just playing all of these incredibly formative games for me at once. So Jak 3 does sweeten the pot a little bit there. But I also love how they build off the story a little bit. Jak 2, here's Dark Jak. Jak 3, here's Light Jak and Dark Jak. And so Dark Jak gives you the moveset that's more aggressive, whereas Light Jak changes things up and says, like, this is more passive, more defensive. So Light Jak can glide, he can fly, he can freeze time, he can shield himself, regen, whereas Dark Jak offers bombs and blasts and strikes and invisibility. And I don't know, just as a kid, this is what made Jak really cool to me. I loved how he looked in both forms. I remember it just exciting me so much as a kid, making him really badass. But also, what I loved about these movesets that you would gradually unlock throughout the course of the game is that it would expand your hub world and the collectibles that you could reach. And I loved trying to hunt down all of the precursor orbs because this is where I really fell in love with getting all of the cheat codes. Invincibility, unlimited ammo, tons of damage. Like, this is when cheat codes were the coolest to me. Nowadays, cheat codes are, I think for a lot of people, a bit of a gimmick, a bit redundant, and for a publisher or a developer, probably something they end up trying to sell to you anyway. So cheat codes really were like a you had to be there era. Everything from big head mode to invincibility was cool. Nowadays, gaming is taken so seriously as a medium that invincibility is like safe mode in a difficulty setting, and it cheapens the experience for some people. Whereas back then, this was something you had to earn. And so for me, earning invincibility, earning these like unlimited infinite Dark Jak, unlimited infinite Light Jak, this was the shit, to be frank. Like, I thought it was so cool, but it's because of those precursor orbs, and there were plenty in this game to get. But I really do think this is where I learned I love collectathons. This is where I learned I love cheat codes. This is where I learned I love Wastelands. I thought the vehicle combat was great. The expanded arsenal was awesome. While it didn't inch things forward as much for people compared from Jak 1 to 2, where it was a much more significant leap, and I get it because it's kind of how I feel jumping from, comparably speaking, Sly 2 to Sly 3. For many people, Sly 3 is like the greatest game ever made. For me, I'm like, Sly 3 is more Sly 2, except worse. It is my least favorite in the series, frankly, whereas Sly 2 is goated. And I think people sit in that pocket. But Jak 2, to me, is incredible. But Jak 3 just opened up so much of my taste in games. And it was just so, again, formative is the right word for me. In its gameplay, in its structure, in the themes it tackles, that sort of thing. I do think the story is a little less memorable, all things considered. But overall, I just loved being in this world, collecting things, killing things, shooting things, driving around. Like, there was just so many unlockables. I remember like going over my friend's house and seeing the things that he get. Again, this is where I learned about like all the cheat codes. I'm like, how are you still in dark mode? This is so cool. Like, I want to do that. I just remember that feeling so much, and then going home and trying to get all the precursor orbs and that feeling of like, yes, I got it too. Yeah, I was definitely such a follower back then when it came to games like this. I had a close friend who lived up the hill from me, literally, and he was the one who introduced me to all of these games. So literally anything he spoon-fed me that I thought was cool is what I was picking up. So that's why a lot of people ask sometimes in the comments like, Maddie, where were you? Or how did you find this game and play it in reverse? Like when you were supposed to really start the first entry in the series. Like I always talk about my first Kingdom Hearts was 2. How'd that happen? It just got handed to me. I was like, this is great. And then I went back and played 2. I played so many series in reverse as a kid, it's not even funny. So if you ever wonder why I'm understanding when developers say, like, we're trying to keep this open for new audiences, it's because I know when I was a kid that this is how I got into so many of my favorite things, was playing games and then working it backwards. So yeah, the Jak series is awesome. And I know it's a controversial take apparently, but I think Intergalactic, at least conceptually speaking, seems kind of interesting. I'm really keen to see Naughty Dog tackle this new sci-fi IP. I know some people were worried a bit about the sort of Concorde energy, the Guardians of the Galaxy energy when the music hits, but I think the score before that track hits and then when they land on the alien planet, literally like 3 seconds later, I feel that hits way better, and I think that is exactly the tone I'm looking for. Like Fede Alvarez was inside the studio. He's the director of Alien Romulus, so I'm hyped about what that collaboration can bring to the table. I think the acting, again, the music, there's a lot there that I'm interested in, but will it be the actual thing that moves the industry forward? That's the question, right? Because that's something that I feel has been missing for Naughty Dog. A lot of how I talked about how I felt with things like The Last of Us Part 2 versus The Last of Us 1. Like, to me, Last of Us 1 is a landmark release in gaming, like must play appointment gaming, because that game, not only narratively speaking, is incredible. Not only is the ending like this fun, like it was the first time I debated with my friends, like what was right, what was wrong, without spoiling anything. But also, The Last of Us, to me at least, represented that starting point of like collecting items from the world, putting them together, and surviving on what little you had. It had survival horror instincts for sure, but it was a lot of like looting and crafting, which nowadays is the eye roll, the gameplay formula that people go, oh my god, this again? And so as Naughty Dog led, the industry would follow, and then we would see these mechanics become redundant and tiresome. And so that's why I think for me, Last of Us Part 2 is a phenomenal gameplay experience, but I don't really love its story as much. But the gameplay experience was a little bit of Jak 2 to Jak 3, I think, for people, of like, yeah, you've moved things forward, like the AI is extremely impressive, the reactivity, how big these play spaces are, how good it feels, how brutal it is. Like, they nail the finer details still to this day. But I'm curious if Intergalactic will feel like that significant step forward, right? Especially in a world with like a Starfield, a Star Wars Outlaws, where we're seeing intergalactic travel. What are the loading screens going to look like, if any at all? What is space travel going to look like? Is it going to be open-ended? Is it going to be just kind of a very linear game? What are we getting here with this? But nonetheless, I see the Akira inspiration. I see the Cowboy Bebop inspiration clear as day. So very keen to see what Naughty Dog is cooking, but wanted to celebrate one of the OGs here in the name of a big game announcement at the Game Awards 2024. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think of Jak and Daxter? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Other than that, I'll catch all of you in the next Retro Rebound. Peace out.